Thank you for joining me today for the first public rehearsal of what is currently an Untitled Trilogy. The three parts of Untitled Trilogy comprise the restaging of a historical trial that took place in pre-independent India, an enactment of a post-independence People's Tribunal, and a theatre text that contemplates an alternate national future. Ganesh, please put off your video and sound. What you see playing here on the screen is a video based on the opening stage directions of the Messenkauf dialogues by Bertolt Brecht. Written between 1939 and 1942, this text is one amongst Brecht's theoretical discussions of theatre. Constructed as a staged, scripted conversation between the philosopher, the actor, the actress, the dramaturge, and the electrician. It is only in doing or performing this material does one, in fact, rehearse the ideas within it. The stage directions are as follows. A stage on which the stagehand is slowly dismantling the set. An actor, a dramaturg, and a philosopher are sitting on chairs and/or set pieces. The dramaturg reaches for a small basket put there by the stagehand and takes out bottles which he uncorks. The actor pours the wine into glasses and hands it around. The public rehearsals that I am doing foreground the fragmented and untidy processes of thought and related notions of contingency, interruption, augmentation, repetition, version, and rupture that are usually obscured by the real thing of performance. I believe that practices of rehearsals can appear as links between aesthetic judgment and social or institutional critique, making a claim for the aesthetic and political potential in the unfinished project. Today's rehearsal are adjacently placed thoughts on the actor, legal personhood, and artificial intelligence. I'm going to begin by reading some sections from Edward Gordon Craig's manifesto called The Actor and the Uber Marionette. Craig was a British scenographer, director, theoretician, and author, also artist and actor. This text was published in his magazine, The Mask, in 1908. Acting is not an art. It is therefore incorrect to speak of the actor as an artist, for accident is an enemy of the artist. Art is the exact antithesis of pandemonium, and pandemonium is created by the tumbling together of many accidents. Art arrives only by design. Therefore, in order to make any work of art, it is clear we may only work in those materials with which we can calculate. Man is not one of these materials. The whole nature of man tends towards freedom. He therefore carries the proof in his own person that as material for the theatre he is useless. In the modern theatre, owing to the use of the bodies of men and women as their material, all which is presented there is of an accidental nature. The actions of the actor's body, the expressions of his face, the sounds of his voice, all are at the mercy of the winds of his emotions. These winds which must blow forever around the artist, moving without unbalancing him. But with the actor, emotion possesses him. It seizes upon his limbs, moving them whither it will. He is at its beck and call. He moves as one in a frantic dream or as one distraught, swaying here and there, his head, his arms, his feet, if not utterly beyond control, are so weak to stand against the torrent of his passions that they are ready to play him false at any moment. From another section of the manifesto. It is of no avail to say that emotion is the spirit of the gods, and it is precisely what the artist aims to produce. First of all, this is not true, and even if it were quite true, every emotion, every casual feeling cannot be of value. Therefore, the mind of the actor, we see, is less powerful than his emotion. For emotion is able to win over the mind to assist in the destruction of that which the mind would produce. As the mind becomes the slave of the emotion, it follows that accident upon accident must be continually occurring. So then, we have arrived to this point, that emotion is the cause which first of all creates, and secondly, destroys. Art, as we have said, can admit of no accidents. Then, which the actor gives us is not a work of art. It is a series of accidental confessions. From another section. The actor looks upon life as a photo machine looks upon life, and he attempts to make a picture to rival a photograph. He never dreams of his art as being an art such, for instance, as music. He tries to reproduce nature. He seldom thinks to invent with the aid of nature, and he never dreams of creating. As I have said, the best he can do when he wants to catch and convey the poetry of a kiss, the heat of a fight, or the calm of death, is to copy slavishly photographically. He kisses, he fights, he lies back and mimics death. And when you think of it, isn't all of this dreadfully stupid? Is it not a poor art and a poor cleverness which cannot convey the spirit and the essence of an idea to an audience, but can only show an artless copy, a facsimile of the thing itself? This is to be an imitator, not an artist. Acting is less exact than photography. Finally, the actor must go, and in his place comes the inanimate figure, the uber marionette, we may call him, until he has won for himself a better name. The uber marionette will not compete with life, but go beyond it. Its ideal will not be the flesh and blood, but rather the body in trance. It will aim to clothe itself with a death-like beauty, while exhaling a living spirit. Here I want to now invite Niranjan to please come online.
Hi.
So Niranjan is a researcher by profession. He is currently the head of data science at Sony Research Center and was a chief scientist and distinguished engineer at TCS Research before that. Niranjan is also a playwright, director, actor, and has written, adapted, or translated 20-plus plays. He is the 2018 recipient of the Tendulkar Dubey Fellowship, awarded annually to 5 theatre artists chosen from all over the country. And he conducts workshops on acting, directing, and experimenting with AI and scientific methods in theatre. Niranjan, thank you for being here. I met Niranjan a couple of weeks ago. We were both on a panel giving a talk. And Niranjan spoke about programming AI, and he spoke about the way he uses AI in theatre, and I was very eager to continue a conversation because actually we didn't have a very full conversation that evening.
Right.
So Niranjan, maybe speak about, what you do with AI.
Sure. So as you were talking about the Uber marionette, I was thinking of a Russian production of Cherry Orchard, which was a short online streaming production that was streamed during the COVID times, where they had built the theater inside a game called Minecraft. And you had these little characters. Every character was a character from Cherry Orchard. And the actors were talking while the game players were actually controlling their movements.
I see.
And the viewers were watching. So everything was dissociated in a way. And that's where one of the things that you mentioned during your earlier discourse is that in humans, all these things are integrated, whereas here in this particular case, they were dissociated. And many times, what I work with, that is AI, many times that is the case, that things are produced at different places and they are brought together at one place so that you can see the outcome. So I work on applications of AI, research in applications of AI to media and entertainment. Though I have been looking at research in AI and data science for a wide variety of industries and applications and so on. Over the last, say, eight years or so, I've been looking at media and entertainment because I eventually wanted to bring my interests outside work, which is theater and entertainment, together with AI and science. But all this time, because I'm a scientist and because I work with certain kind of concepts, I've been using AI while doing my theater process. And I've used it in a variety of ways. Maybe I could describe some of those
Yes,
to
please.
you.
Yep.
So, say for example, if you, many times you start with a script, and as a director, you need to know where the script sort of might lag behind, and you need some special treatment at certain places so that sometimes, as they say, that here is where it is dragging. The script itself sometimes contains these drag points. So I just wanted to see whether essentially script is words. That's not really true. But many times scripts that we see often see in India are words, and words carry emotions. Words carry intensity. So I try to make a model wherein every word is given some sort of an emotional, say, strength or intensity, which I borrowed from a dictionary called Emoticon, and then emoji word, sorry. And then human attention is a depleting source or depleting, say, resource, and it starts going down, and the words are sort of trying to bring it up. Because when I say I walk towards the table versus I say I dart towards the table, the latter carries more intensity. So similarly, could I catch this in words? And so therefore I built this model that your attention is going down and these words are trying to pull it up.
Right.
Eventually what happens is that I get a profile of intensity wherein there are certain plateaus. Now, it might sound that there could be exceptions to this, and obviously there could be. I got pretty good results in a lot of scripts that I was dealing with. I could actually locate places where there was a flat for more than 3 to 6 minutes. And as a director, you have to look at those flats. That more than 3 to 6 minutes, you have something that either is going down or staying flat. Given people's attention spans, that's where you need to work on. And you gave it to human readers. They also found that, yeah, these are the places that you could need work with. Even if they were not influenced, they could also point those places out. So that's one of the examples. The other example that I can give is that I many times work with Chat GPT. And Chat GPT is a generative AI which can generate good language, especially English. What you can do is converse with it and try to get answers to your questions. Could theater artists use this? And again, given scripts, theater artists go into the script, they analyze the scripts and so on. And many times actors are so vulnerable that they sit on a script and they try to decipher the script left and right, and they get burdened by it. But often, what they portray ends up being a few concepts. For example, Gabbar Singh is ruthless, Gabbar Singh is manipulative, Gabbar Singh is cruel. Uh, what you get in the nuances is the feel, but what you carry as concepts about that are these very sort of blocky ideas.
Right.
So, what if you could ask these questions to ChatGPT? That given a particular, say, script, can you tell me what three adjectives I could use to describe this character? Can you tell me why? It gives pretty good answers. And that sort of, at least for the sake of rehearsals, eliminates character choices in a good way. Because you can try this again and again, and you can say that, no, I don't want these three, give me some more. And it gives some more pretty decent alternatives. You could try those. And sometimes you could get one adjective which is like really different than what you have been thinking about in terms of the character. And that can actually make your character pretty unique because it's not a very standard thing that you would interpret from the script. You could also take other questions such as what is the objective of the character in this particular scene? What kind of questions should I, as an actor, ask myself while looking at this scene? The kind of answers that you get are definitely worth as an exercise for the actor, that they can actually look at these points and they can work on them instead of going into the script unguided.
So, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I
Yeah,
mean,
please.
part of the process of doing theater and, actors working in rehearsal is to be able
Right.
to do, and as they have done, some of this themselves. And the whole process of it is also, I think, part of what goes into, what is finally produced at the end, right? The process
Absolutely.
of
Yeah.
going through a process. And
Right.
how would you respond to that? Because
Yes.
what you're
So
doing
you
is you're eliminating at least part of the process, right?
right. So often there's a trade-off in the process and indulgence in the process.
Right.
Often you see actors, especially young actors, indulging a lot in the script to the extent that they lose the focus in terms of what is to be seen. And they are going to be vulnerable in front of everyone, the director and other audiences and so on. So that's the problem, that they need help at all times. And with something like this, they can try out multiple options early on.
Right.
When they are into the script, if they are getting any assist from such kind of an analysis, they can look at it from that point of view instead of trying out everything with respect to that script. And trying out everything is not only a question of time, but it's also a question of direction.
Right.
Many times they say constraints bring out the art. It's like in the raga, if you have 5 notes only, you have to play within those 5 notes. If you just have 3 colors to paint painting, you can use those 3 colors and uh, be creative in the use of those 3 colors. Something
Right.
similar to that happens, and they also, I won't say learn, because actors can be at different levels of experience, but
Right.
especially the younger actors. And I work with younger actors or less experienced actors. I often work with them. So for them, it's a way of controlling and enhancing their creativity, controlling their choices and enhancing their creativity.
So
Because
sorry, go
is
ahead.
often creativity often comes out of constraints.
Right. One of the things that we kind of began to talk about when we did meet was, I mean, the fact that the kind of the politics of AI, right?
Right.
And that there is, I'd like you to kind of respond to that, because I mean, if this is information being fed in, after all, the pool from where this information is kind of
Right.
being trawled is a very particular pool, right?
Right. So I understand that there are biases with the type of information that goes into making these models. And
Right.
these biases are sort of universal biases because the bias sort of is a result of what exists out there in large numbers. Say, for example, English articles exist in large numbers, much larger numbers than, say, compared to Marathi articles or Tamil articles. Even Hindi articles, because Hindi is spoken, I think it's the largest spoken language in India. But yet, English articles are many more, and that's the bias in the world. There are other biases, gender biases, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Uh, they are going to creep in one way or the other. But at the same time, there is always a way to correct these biases because the AI is actually not AI as a concept. Uh, is not sort of designed to follow a certain line of thought. It's designed to be open to new data. If you provide it with new data, even with Chat GPT, if you provide with newer prompts saying that you are being biased here, can you do something about it? Uh, the good thing is that it has a way to express things in a different way because that there is bias is also incorporated somewhere in the whole gamut of things that it has learned.
Um,
That there is that.
Okay, so I mean, I just want to. So I'm just trying to think of how, this kind of this bias, and there is a limitation. I mean, there is a
Right.
limitation to AI, I guess, right?
Absolutely,
So in
yes.
the material that you use to, as part of the theater process, I mean,
Right.
are you taking into account this, because after all, now you're
Yes.
working with one more bias. There is always the
Right.
bias of the self, there is the bias of the
Yes.
performer. To work,
Yes.
because everybody comes from a very different place and thinks differently. And then you've got one more sort of
Right.
data bank, as it
Right.
were, with
Right.
some very specific biases, right?
Right. Right.
And I'm just trying
Right.
to think about actually what that means to to the
Yes.
process, of course, but also to what you're producing at the end.
Right.
If one considers theater also as a way to as a series of thoughts, right? And it's
Right.
thoughts
Right.
about the world.
Absolutely. So, what happens during that is that, say, if I was giving examples of adjectives, do the adjectives reflect any sort of a bias? Uh, for example, if it's a female character, do certain adjectives appear more frequently? Are these a part of the text itself, or are these a part of what the AI is telling me? These are the questions which need to be asked. And anyway, when we interpret a play, if we are sensitive, we do ask these questions. So
Right.
at some point in the process, these questions would be asked. And if we think that whatever has been given or whatever has been used for us, that assist, uh, has not really been biased in that sense that it's providing an undue attention to a certain aspect such as gender or class and so on and so forth, and it is hurting the play because sometimes maybe the play is about bias
Right.
and sometimes probably that bias needs to be there in showing a particular character. That's the thing. It's a matter of a dialogue between the actor and the director. While the AI part of it is out of the
Okay.
picture in a way. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the Messinkoff dialogues for a minute, and I'll
Sure.
come back to you. I have some more questions to ask.
Certainly.
So, from the Messinkoff dialogues, many people assume that a human being is the finished article, looking like this in one light and like that in another, saying this in one situation and that in another. And so, right from the start, they attempt to grasp this figure and to become it completely. But it is better to see a human being as an unfinished article, one who should be allowed to develop gradually, from utterance to utterance and action to action. I'm going to show a clip of an audition. It was made for a VR exhibition conceived of by Kai Tukman and Anuja Ghosalkar on the open source platform Mozilla Hubs for Serendipity Arts Foundation, New Delhi, between December 16th to 18th, 2020. The title of this show was Look, Here is Your Machine, Get In. My work was an online version of an earlier piece called Rehearsing Azad Hind Radio, in addition to this audition, which is what I'm going to show, called Performing Chris Merkin. This piece has texts from Brecht's Messinkoff dialogues, Heinemüller's Hamlet Machine, texts by Achille Mbembe, and conversations I've had with my friend Chris Merkin. Ganesh, please play.
Hello, my name is Atul Kumar. I'm auditioning for Zuleikha Chaudhari, and for this audition, I will be performing the part of Chris Merkin. I am an actor. It is for me to defend nature. But of course, there's more to it than that. It is for me to affect nature. Nature is alterable, but that's not all. It is for me to show how people are, what really happens to them. At least that's part of it. It is for me to contradict, to confirm, to copy, to change, to show myself, to hide, to clarify, to conceal, to simplify, to complete, to remember. My last encounter with my father was about 14 years ago. Our meeting lasted for about 10 minutes, and he made it very clear to me that this was perhaps the last time he was seeing me. My father is a computer programmer, and I figured that I may never have a chance to see him again in real life. And so I began to look for him in the virtual reality communities he moved around in. As I tried to locate him, I realized that he mostly lived online now. that he didn't move in the internet with his real name. He had kind of transformed himself into a virtual avatar. I didn't really know who he was. But one should be allowed to develop gradually from utterance to utterance and action to action. The human being is an unfinished article. Human beings are formed by changing. And that's how their image develops within us, by resembling us and by not resembling us. Recently, I discovered that my father makes theatre plays. He's a theatre director on Second Life. It was a weird thing to realize that my father was a theatre director in a virtual reality, because it made me think about my own profession as a dramaturge. Is it that I'm living the dream of my father without knowing it? Or is it that he's imitating my life in a way to get close to me? Standing on the stage that my father built on Second Life, my avatar has automatic movements, automatic gestures, and automatic expressions. They are all bought. I thought my body was mine to own, or at least I ought to own it. But here, matter and life itself is a finite and computable object, a commodity to be replicated under market consumption, where the market is reimagined as the primary mechanism for the validation of almost everything, including the truth itself. As this century unfolds, bodies are increasingly surrounded by an expanding wave front of calculation. More and more, these waves incorporate life, death, and matter into systems of abstraction and mechanical reasoning. And in the process, they generate new automatic couplings between matter and machines, waste and human beings. There's a bifurcation between life and bodies, and not every body is thought of as containing life, and not each life and every breath is thought of as having utmost value. There is the reality of discounted bodies in this new architecture, which are believed to contain no life as such. I am the data bank, and there is no crowd. My drama has not taken place. The script was lost. The actors hung their faces on the nails of the green room. The stage prompter rots in his box. The overstuffed plain corpses in the audience. Don't move a finger.
Thank you, Ganesh. Please put the other video full screen. Not this one yet. Please go back to the screen video. I'm now going to read some notes from a conversation with Lawrence Liang on the question of whether artificially intelligent systems endowed with computational creativity are capable of being considered authors or joint authors in copyright law. The notion of the person, persona, stems from the word prosopon, a mask in Greek and Roman theater, and Roman jurists did not equate the word persona with the word homo. So the legal concept of the person did not necessarily refer to a human. The entire idea of legal status is something that actually hovers above and beyond the idea of biological personhood, and it's a legal fiction. It becomes, in a way, a mask that you wear that enables you to occupy different kinds of personhood. One man could, from this perspective, be many persons. The concept of persona served to determine a man's legal status. You could thus be one person as a Roman citizen, another as pater familias, yet another if they performed certain public offices. And so, depending on the context, a person wore different legal masks. Legal personhood is aware of its own artifice, and rather than treating it as an effect of natural phenomena, personhood is recognized as an artificial identity conferred by status. For instance, corporations are persons. What the law enables through the fiction of the mask or the legal mask overlaps with the idea of theatricality. So the mask is what enables you to be another. Ironically, the persona is actually a reference very literally to the mask rather than to an essential core, some idea of a true self. There isn't a true self outside the mask. Continuing from our conversation, and again, these are, I'm reading notes of this conversation. Joanna Burke argues that being human has been less an empirical fact than a normative condition, and historically, the privilege of being human has been unequally distributed on the basis of color, race, ethnicity, caste, gender, sexuality, and political beliefs of actual humans. The category of the human, far from being universal, is in fact a shape-shifting entity, and diverse cultural, religious, spiritual, and philosophical traditions have evolved different kinds of boundaries that separate the realm of the human from the non-human. Lawrence proposes this set of difficult questions. What aspects of human life define the essence of our personhood? Is our personhood constituted in our capacity to communicate with others? Is it in a notion of consciousness or self-awareness? Is it in our intellectual abilities or cognitive functions? Is it in our capacity to register and recognize a response to pain, physical or emotional, to interact with others, or to respond to our external environment? He says authorship in copyright seems to function as a technology of personification. It allows the law to distinguish persons from non-persons. Lawrence spoke of the fact that we can also begin to read the dilemma around authorship as symptomatic of a large set of cultural anxieties about what it means to be human in the face of technological advancements that challenge claims of consciousness and rationality that have hitherto justified the claims to the singularity of humans. That there is a historic relationship between copyright, technology, and authorship. That machines in many ways invented the very idea of copyright, both in substance and in form, and continue to reinvent copyright. He spoke about copyright bringing together two philosophical strands. that there has always been a very strong link between ideas of property and personhood, and he talked about Locke and Kant. John Locke. Identity of persons lies in the memory and knowledge of one's past self and actions, continued on under the consciousness of being the same person, whereby every man owns himself. He formulates in this passage the psychological conception of a person. The crux of personhood is the ability to reflect, and in particular, to reflect on oneself, and thus have a feeling of identity in different times and places. In Locke, consciousness is the question of mental operations that appropriates the self to itself, where to appropriate means to identify with or to make property of. For Kant, the person is defined by the fact that she is responsible for her own acts. I want to refer here to the testimony of Samina Lutfa in the staged hearing, rehearsing the witness, the Bhaval court case. The Bhaval court case was an extended court case in pre-independence India that revolved around the identity of a sannyasi claiming to be Ramendra Narayan Roy, the second Kumar of Bhaval, the heir of one of the last large zamindari estates in Dhaka, who was presumed dead a decade earlier. The claim was contested by the British Court of Wards and also by the widow of the second Kumar of Bhaval, Bibabati Devi. The case was in trial from 1930 to 1946. Samina Lutfa performed the role of Bibabati Devi, the wife of the second Kumar of Bhaval. We used actual trial transcripts as the script for the staged hearing. In her cross-examination with advocate Jyotirmay Barua, Samina says, "To me, performance is how I see the world, how it is, and how I want it to be. It is a political position. It is a question of reality, what was, what is, and what can be made real or can be exposed as something truthful. As a sociologist, I look from the outside, but as an actor, I begin from the inside. When I analyze Bibabati, I have to expose her truths as well as her lies. I have to inhabit her without judgment, as there is no other way of building a character. If I want to analyze Bibabati's character, how do I define her? She was a 13-year-old married to a man who is 4 years older than her and who is a prince. She enters a big zamindari family household, which must have been very intimidating. She probably was told that all husbands, particularly one who is a zamindar, went to prostitutes, that it was the norm, that there was an expectation for her, despite everything, that she had a duty to be the wife. We can push this further to imagine and say, at that age, whatever she actually might have felt, she probably thought she loved him. We can imagine that she was attached to him. Jyotirmay says, "In your deposition, you have witnessed the Kumar dying in front of you, and being his wife, who loved him, you must have been very upset." Samina says, she was upset and she believed her husband was dead. Jyotirmay, do you, Ms. Lutfa, feel that Bibabati Devi was a credible eyewitness? Samina, the Kumar's health was the central focus and she did everything she could to make him better. Given the sudden illness and the dramatic decline of the Kumar's health, an unexpected and traumatic situation for a 20-year-old who had never had such a big responsibility, yes, it is possible she was not completely aware of the situation. But for me, Bibabati's belief in the death of her husband is more important than whether she was credible as a witness. Jyotirmay says, So we can clearly assume that Bibabati's sense of reality and belief are intertwined in her deposition, which leaves room to conclude that the Kumar had perhaps not actually died that night. Samina. To me, it is irrelevant whether he died or not. She believed that he died, and it was acknowledged by others, including doctors, family members present at that moment, everyone. What is more important is based on that belief, what she achieved later on. She moved out of the estate, claimed the full share of the Kumar's life insurance, complained to the Court of Wards about financial irregularities in the estate, resisted the Court of Wards taking over her share of the estate. She was in charge of her own money. She had servants, cars, a house, and a family. This is a sign of her own agency and the acquiring of an independent self. So Jyotirmay says, in these 14 years of the alleged death of the Kumar, Bibabati has transformed into another person. So would it not be the case that in your, Bibabati's, present state of freedom and a way of living, that is actually the main reason that you, she, are denying that the plaintiff is the Kumar? Samina says, we know that Bibabati was attached to the Kumar, so we can assume that if he in fact did return, she was more than likely to accept him if she recognized him because she loved him. On the other hand, if she is a changed person, from a frail young woman to a woman who is able to assert herself, if she herself is changed, is he recognizable to her anymore? I want to come back to you, Niranjan, to ask a couple of questions.
Sure.
So, I mean, what would it be for you? You're specifically a theatre person, and you have a long history in the theatre, not just as a director but also as an actor. So there is a great deal of knowledge, I would say, that you have of what it means to be an actor. So maybe you could talk about what that is for you, and what is it that you take from here, from this knowledge,
Right.
back to programming AI.
Back to programming AI, right? So there are a few things that come to my mind when I think of this, because most of the stuff that we do in AI is born out of curiosity first, and then people think of business applications and all sorts of benefits and bad applications of things, etc. So all that comes later. Curiosity is that, can you make AI behave like a human being? Again, I would like to make a distinction here before we make this point, that AI mimics the end result of a human endeavor. It does not necessarily mimic the process.
Right.
So what it means to be human is the process of reaching the outcome, including the need of generating that outcome, as well as the process that happens after generating the outcome.
Right.
They are different in the human and different in AI. I'm not saying that they are not there in an AI. Say, for example, after an outcome is produced, let's say a picture using some generative AI is produced, an algorithm stops there, saying that, yes, I have reached some sort of an allowed error, and that's where I stop mathematically. But for a human, it could be secretion of a hormone, or that hormone says that, yeah, now you are satisfied. So what happens when you feel the need for being creative or being artistic or getting into any of these sort of endeavors? That need, as well as the process of generating the outcome, as well as the process of like what happens after the outcome, is very human as we define in a human. So that's one distinction I would like to make. But
Right.
yet, in terms of an outcome, could there be anything that you could do? So there is this exercise that we often do called the repetition exercise, Meisner,
Right.
Sanford Meisner repetition exercise. So could two AI actors or two AI bots talk to each other as if they're doing a repetition? So this is something that we were trying to investigate and said, could we just do that in speech? So we were able to produce speech which is like real human speech, near real human speech, and which is emotional. So we could say that we could produce any type of emotional speech in a particular say in a particular space. That it could be angry, it could be sad, it could be neutral, any of this, but with a lot of granularity if we could produce.
Right.
What we tried to learn from conversations is how a particular character responds to the other character implicitly. I'm not saying explicitly, implicitly, as in how is it likely to respond?
Right.
So that we try to learn, and then now we had two bots talking to each other, or two machines generating speech talking to each other. They take the same text, but the starting point is different. And then, because of the slight uncertainty that you have in the algorithms, which is the algorithms are probabilistic, so there is slight uncertainty, just like there is in human behavior. And it goes from one end to another. Next time you just change the starting point, the whole thing will sound different. In between, if you just try to change the tone of any of those sentences, it will now take a different turn, etc. A human relies on instinct to change the tone. A human actor. Capturing that instinct is difficult, but again, if you look at the outcome, it's not so difficult. If you look at the process, it is difficult.
Right.
What causes an instinctive response in a human being, the process is complicated. But making that outcome available, that something that it felt like this happened instinctively, that can probably be managed by AI agents or AI or machines or actors which might be artificial actors. Now, this is just speech.
Right.
You have to look at the face also. And there is this problem that we face that it's called the uncanny valley, and which is that as we go closer to real human beings, our familiarity and comfort level with something that we are talking to or something that we are seeing increases. And say, for example, a tiger versus a human being, you're more comfortable with a human being than a tiger. So as you go closer to a human being, it increases. But as it goes very close, but it's not close enough, that's where it faces a big dip in the comfort level. Why could that be? One of the reasons is that evolution-wise, if you're looking at something that looks like a human, but there is something lacking, and it's a little bit less, it might just be dead.
Right.
That's how dead bodies are. So you have a natural. I mean, people have done experiments wherein there is a certain areas in the brain fire when they see such a being. So scaling that uncanny valley is one of the technical challenges before AI. And that's why, unless that is solved, you getting people who look like people and talking to each other is difficult. You can get puppets, and you would get involved in puppets because
Right.
puppets are not close enough, so you're okay with it. But when it was very close to human beings, like Sophie the robot, it's suddenly creepy, and you won't be able to tolerate it for a long time.
Right.
So that's the technical challenge that is there. We are trying to take these things from theater to there, like things such as how do real human interactions happen? What is the problem when they become almost real? is what I want to take there. And the other thing that I often take in a general sense from theater to research is storytelling.
Right.
Because when you report your what you want to say, when you report your findings or report your results, it has a protagonist and it has an arc of some kind, and the way in which you tell the story resembles that. So that's also something that you take from here to there, from theater to
Right.
research.
So it sounds from what you're saying like I mean, the endeavor here with AI is to come very close to the human, to being human.
Outcome.
The outcome.
To show the human outcome. So that's the difference. That
Right.
it's going to focus on the outcome and not on the process.
But I
But
mean,
it
sorry,
might form its own process.
it may form its own process.
Yeah, its own process. And that own process is something that only the AI might be familiar with. And then we step into the territories of whether it is conscious or AI consciousness and so on and so forth. And that's again a tricky question to answer. It hasn't gone there. So that that will take some time
Yes.
for the scientists to figure out.
But I mean, it feels like the endeavor is to get there.
Endeavor is to get there. The curiosity is to see whether machines can replicate human behavior, outcomes of human behavior, or they can replicate the processes of human behavior. Processes are more on the curiosity side. Outcomes are more on the application side, typically.
Sorry, could
So
you say that
outcomes-
again? Could you say that again?
Processes, replicating processes are more from the curiosity side. Can I replicate process? Can I replicate a hormonal secretion, for example? Is from the curiosity side. Like, what is an equivalent of that in a machine? Versus replicating an outcome. A machine writing a play, for example. The outcome is more on the application side, that you want a play to be written. Therefore, you're trying to see whether a machine can write a play. So curiosity is there, but the application is in mind.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
this comes to really the question of, I mean, the human beings do exist. Do we need something to, I mean, why do we need to replicate the human being?
So they will exist, like human beings will exist. And
I'm
in
kind of
case-
curious. I'm kind of curious.
Right.
You know, I
Absolutely.
mean,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I can fully understand. So when people get into situations that might need them to isolate from others, and something like real humans are around, and you cannot any longer make that distinction, is when it becomes clearer. So it's, in a way, the need for another human being. Under the so-called dystopian scenarios, where the need for interacting with another human being without having to face a lot of problems that we face with human to human interaction. When that arises, I think the people might want that. So, for example, that movie Her, where Joaquin Phoenix his character falls in love with the operating system, which is just a voice. Because someone is there to listen to him all the time, someone is there not to confront him, and so on and so forth. So maybe that's a niche. I mean that's a place that people want to be.
Right.
In the absence of social interactions, in the absence of people understanding them, in the absence of the world trying to isolate them. So in a way, yeah. So in a way, I think it might be very good for people who are socially awkward, people who face the bias of the society actually. We recently did a play reading of a German play, German in the sense, a translated German play, wherein playwright himself he suffers from a bipolar disorder, and he has written about a character with that, and what happens to that character, and how does that character get isolated, and there is no real hope according to what the play says. Those are the cases where you need someone who can endure and understand.
I see.
So those are the places where, again, you need real human beings who won't actually judge you and who won't get tired, who may not have any limits to their empathy.
Right, as opposed to real humans.
As opposed to real humans. And I'm not blaming real humans for that. But I mean, there might be applications which we probably, I won't say might find hard to imagine. I think we can imagine a world where you don't want conflict, where you don't want isolation, so on and so forth. So I think that's where all this might come in. All this might be of assistance. The stress is typically on making money, replacing humans in certain jobs, and therefore making money and making more profits and so on. That's there, but the collateral, I would say, the reverse of damage is something like this, which is an encouraging thought for me, at least.
Well, would it be fair to say, just as a last, I guess, comment or question, that in a way, in working with AI, actually, you are, in that regard as well, also working in a process that is, I think you've already said it actually, but you're working in a process that actually very strongly mimics the one that you do with actors, but in a kind of a reverse way. Would I be?
Okay, so in the absence of the actors trying to explore it by themselves, but in the process taking a lot of time and feeling the burden of that.
Yes, but in your work with AI, actually
right.
you are doing a very similar process, right?
Yes, it's a similar process because the outcomes are similar. Again, the outcomes that we need are the human outcomes. I would like the actor to do that by himself or herself. Instead of that, the AI is assisting the actor, and I am interested in the outcome as a director.
Right,
that way.
right.
And I'm also interested in the well-being of the actor in another sense. And so that's what I think happens when, people anthropomorphize very easily. Anthropomorphize ChatGPT, that it's giving me this, and today it like really, I had a blast with it, etc. So,
but isn't the process? Sorry.
Sorry. Yes, please.
I mean, the point of a process, and I'm just thinking about one, it's also about, for an actor, I would say, this process and this vulnerability that you speak of, isn't that actually something that actually needs to be, is a strength, it's not a weakness. And the process itself is, in a way, a very important thing just for the actor themselves as an actor, but also as a person, as a human being, because it's in some way you're expanding yourself, right?
Right. So, does that expansion not happen because someone told you a bit more about the script, say, for example? I think it does happen. So let's say if a character is lenient and you as a person are not, the input that it is lenient comes from, let's say, AI, you will still have to think about what it means to be lenient.
Right.
How do I
So you're
process
saying the process is the same.
Right. And so certain things the actor has to do, but choices, playing with choices, and eventually starting to make your own choices quickly and trying them out. So my general stress is on trying out a variety of alternatives rather than just closing in on one
Right.
after a long deliberation. So for that, it's very amenable to that, and I don't need to even get involved at times.
Right.
People do their own quick work and they come equipped, is
Right.
what I have found.
Okay.
That they might be happy doing that, actually.
Right.
Anyway, they have to be vulnerable at one point. But many people, I see many actors getting burdened to the extent that they cannot go beyond a certain level because they don't get this support.
Right.
So actually, that's one thing that I try to fix in
Right.
the processes that I have, that not burdening actors and letting them be, so that the output that comes out uh, is free of it doesn't come out of stress.
Right. Well, thanks so much for this conversation. I mean, I'm glad we were able to have it here. We weren't able to have it earlier. But of course, as I go on right now, I am staying with your idea of building an entity to come closer and closer to being human. And so I'm going to continue. Thanks so much for this talk.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was lovely talking to you and the audience who is listening.
Thank you.
Thanks so much to them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Lawrence referenced in our conversation, Lawrence referenced Cheryl Hamilton and her book Impersonations, Troubling the Person in Law and Culture. Questions of personhood are most powerfully produced by and through liminal beings. Liminal beings inhabit the boundary zones between the comfortable categories of animal, vegetable, and mineral, with which we prefer to organize the order of things. They are powerful because they make us uncomfortable. We recognize ourselves in them, and at the same time, they are other. Liminal beings are unnatural subjects. Sometimes they seem to straddle our categories, simultaneously object and subject. Other times they reveal our categories for the constructed fictions that they are, exposing them as tenable at best and absurd at worst. They are always unruly, promiscuous, and troublesome entities. Liminal beings force an encounter with personhood, requiring us to recognize the instability of one of our most fundamental concepts of the self. Lawrence spoke about being in a paradoxical moment, where on the one hand we are witness to the expansion of ideas of personhood in the realm of ecology, for example, rivers and animals, even as we retreat to a comfortable idea of personhood in the domain of copyright. The anxieties provoked by the grant of authorship to machines is because it seems to compromise something that has been associated with what is unique or essential to being human and to what distinguishes us from animals and machines. I was very interested in this idea of liminality because it is about thresholds. And I want to end on a thought about the actor, about acting. Is the actor a capacity and a process? Not of sharing boundaries, but rather deborderization. Because to be human is to open oneself up to the possibility, always already, of becoming another, of knowing and respecting the limits of one's body, with respect to the presence and absence of other bodies in space. I'm going to end with a conversation I had with Avik Sen on performing the role of Subhash Chandra Bose in Rehearsing Azad Hind Radio, a 2018 video work made using selected broadcasts by Bose on Azad Hind Radio, which outlined his political philosophies and strategies to attain Indian independence. Our conversation is the spine of this work. Ganesh, can you please play the video?
I kept looking at the reflection of my dressed up and made up person facing me on the 3-layered glass partition in the recording studio, and speaking to this triple reflection as if it were my primary addressee, my audience. I found myself turned into a profoundly unfamiliar person, speaking in a voice and using a mode of delivery that I would never use as myself, but which was somehow organic and integral to that reflection in the glass that I was speaking to. Yes, speaking to, speaking for, and speaking as. That I was representing, as it were. That person in the glass was both me and radically not me. He was quite another, an other creature. This was a transformation, an inanimation that I had never really imagined as possible before I actually experienced it in my own body and mind. What or who was this other person, physically recreated through the texts of Bose's broadcasts and through photographic images? One should always distinguish between the unity of action, the space that I was inhabiting when I played the character of Bose, was the authenticity or conviction, the truth with which he had felt, or I feel he had felt, the primarily political emotions and ideologies expressed in the speech and pledge. Emotions and ideologies that were utterly alien, even repugnant to me in my own person, if I were to think rationally and intellectually about and into them. All these different political things about him, these were as fundamentally other to me as the thickened eyebrow and mustache, the beard and the double-breasted suit that I had put on to get into the character of Bose. And this, I would repeat, was not empathy. Yet the process of coming to this realization of what he may have been like was a profoundly transformative experience. It was a transformation of one's identity. I would even go as far as to say that it was a transformation of one's sexual identity. I had become another kind of man, I had become another kind of male creature when I played both with regard to what I wore, with regard to my voice, my secondary sexual characteristics. The end of the British Empire in India. Okay. Yeah, I got it. That one. Then will come the end. This was also a transformation of my present into his past. And in that sense, not only an ideological or ontological, but also a historical transformation. I had entered into a kind of realization of a bit of history. What I'm trying to describe was not a personal or subjective experience, but an interpersonal or intersubjective one. The evolution of the movement is analogous. Perhaps this is what makes such a transformation or transaction between a self and another, in a precise sense, dialectical, dialogic, or dialogic, or, to appropriate Bose's favorite political vocabulary, this is the synthesis, the reconciliation, but without conciliation, of opposites, the reconciliation of opposites that happens when a thesis enters into a lived relationship with its antithesis. Considering everything, one is inclined to hold that the next phase in world history will produce a synthesis between communism and fascism. And will it be a surprise if that synthesis is produced in India?